أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ربي زدني علما. So assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome back to our daily reflections on the Quran, and we have been covering a verse of every day. And today, inshallah, we will be exploring a verse from Sura Hujarat, which is chapter 49 of the Quran, and this is verse 12. Sura Hujarat is full of verses and ayat about social relationships and how we can improve these, what the things that we need to stay away from. And this verse is very much in that line. So in verse 12, the Quran cautions the believers, "O you who believe, avoid much suspicion. Indeed, some suspicions are sins." So we know that a habit that can poison even a strong relationship is a constant suspicion and negative interpretations about the thoughts, intentions, motivations, behaviors about the other person. The human mind, we have to understand why this is so prevalent. The human mind is basically a meaning-making machine. Thoughts pop in and out of our heads at a furious pace, 60,000 thoughts a day, according to some experts, most of them negative, by the way. Our brains try to figure everything out. And when there is a gap in our knowledge, when we don't have the full picture or understanding, the brain will fill in that information by making assumptions. Now, so far, so good, right? The problem is that the default tendency of the brain is to make negative assumptions rather than positive ones. And this is not a design flaw, like I like to remind myself. There are very good survival reasons for this. If we were truly under threat, pausing, having a positive interpretation, getting rid of our negative, it would not help us, right? We would be destroyed if we were truly under attack. In daily life, however, it is not helpful to be in this default mode. And since most of our assumptions and interpretations are based on our own worldview, a habitual way of thinking, the brain just gets used to thinking in a certain way. It becomes automatic. And on our past baggage, they have very little to do with actual facts. And reality is, we don't know the facts about other people's intentions, what their thoughts are, what their worldview is. That is something we are not privy to unless they tell us very clearly. So when, these negative thoughts involve other people with whom we are in a relationship, especially close relationships, they really can cause havoc in the relationship. I like to call it as one of the poisons that will destroy your relationship if left unchecked. They do this by destroying trust and goodwill in the relationship itself, which is the biggest capital that we have with another person. And they rob us of our own peace of mind. As we know, it can be exhausting to stay vigilant continuously and to keep guessing the motivations of other people. Now, spiritual masters explain that these suspicions and assumptions in the mind are planted by the shaitan. Why? Because he does not wish to see believers having good relationships with each other. When our relationships are strong horizontally, we can much easily work on our vertical relationship with God, and we increase in faith, right? So, harmony between believers would cause our faith to grow, and this would weaken and derail Shaitan's mission. So now, given that the tendency to fall prey to negative assumptions is very human and one that we are all susceptible to, how do we navigate through these negative thoughts about each other that come into our heads? Now, inshallah, we will discuss more about this in tomorrow's episode. But for today, let us start with beginning to notice when our mind goes down the path of these negative assumptions about other people. Firstly, let's pause and redirect ourselves. And one of a really good mantra, to say is La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahil aliyil azim. There is no strength or power, there is no power or strength save in Allah, the High and the Great. And Imam Ali alayhi salam advises us to say this in every hardship. And this is something, we can say at every moment of the day to remind ourselves that indeed, he is the all-powerful, and especially when we're working on changing something, we are calling upon strength from him. Secondly, there is a beautiful verse in Dua Makaram al-Akhlaq from Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, which is found in the Sahifa Sajadiyah. And this relates exactly to this point. So he says, "O God, make the wishing, the suspicion, and the envy which Shaitan throws into my heart." So in other words, transform that. Transform that into what? Into a remembrance of your mightiness, a reflection upon your power, and a working against your enemy. So, in other words, whenever we are faced with negative assumptions about people, we need to catch ourselves. This is the first step. The first step is to recognize what the mind is doing and to realize that this is not the truth. This is, it is our mind making meaning, which it always does. So, so again, two ways that we can refocus, which is that whenever we notice our thoughts straying towards negative assumptions about another, one, we need to remind ourselves of the strength and power of Allah, and two, refocus our attention towards his remembrance and praying to him to turn that, to transform those negative assumptions into a remembrance of his mightiness and a reflection on his power. So, inshallah, I hope this was useful. If you're finding these useful, please do share them with others. And if you could write a review on iTunes or on Facebook or Instagram or wherever you consume your content, it would be so helpful to get this message across to other people. So, thank you for listening, and inshallah, see you again tomorrow.